thank the gentlewoman for yielding back. We now go to, I recognize our colleague, Mr. Bridenstine from Oklahoma.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it's really difficult, if not impossible, to prove a counterfactual, which means if the economy in Texas is growing, there's a whole host of reasons that could be, and more regulations does not grow the economy in Texas. Same in California. In fact, I'd like to address the issues specifically that we've been talking about. I grew up in Arlington, Texas. I represent the 1st District of Oklahoma now. I went to college at Rice University down in Houston, Texas. And I'd like to address my question to Dr. Honeycutt. In your testimony, you wrote, quote, astonishingly, and every time I read testimony and the word astonishingly shows up, what comes next is critically important. Astonishingly, EPA's analysis, that's the EPA's own analysis, shows mortality increasing in certain cities, including Detroit and Houston, when decreasing the ozone standard from 75 parts per billion to 70 parts per billion. That is astonishing. Did that get taken into account? Are they, what they're suggesting is that it's worth maybe increasing mortality for these regulations? Can you address this for us?
Sure. That's called the NOx disbenefit. And if you look nationwide, there would be a net, according to EPA, a net decrease in mortality. But if you look at some specific cities, I looked at 12 in particular. Those 2 cities, lowering the standard would actually increase mortality. And it's because NOx both creates and destroys ozone. So what you're going to be doing is increasing ozone concentrations in the inner cities while decreasing it in the suburbs.
That is good information that we on the committee need to hear. Question for Mr. Sadredin. Maybe you could say that for us. Sorry.
Sadredin.
Sadredin. Thank you. How many different state implementation plans does San Joaquin Valley have in effect today?
As we speak today, we have 6 different state implementation plans for ozone and particulate matter, all with multiple milestones, redundant, duplicative timelines that we have to comply with. And as we speak today, we're in the process of writing another plan for the standard that was just replaced. And in the next 3 years, we have to write 4 additional state implementation plans for a total of 10 state implementation plans just for ozone and particulate matter.
And how difficult is it for your agency to keep up with these SIPs?
Yeah. You know, that's the least of the problems. You know, what the government inefficiency that this brings about, the staff work. The bigger concern that we have with this is the confusion that this brings to the public, to the business community that is subject to these redundant, duplicative regulations, and a tremendous number of lawsuits that each of these same deadlines, same targets that are established in 10 different vehicles create opportunities for attorneys. Of course, that's good job security for them, but good government, it is not good public education. It is not, and it is something that could easily be fixed, in our opinion. One of the suggestions that we are making in this 2015 Clean Air Act modernization that we're proposing is that when EPA establishes a new standard, for them to subsume all the standards into the new one, pick the most stringent requirements from the previous standards, give us a single set of timelines and deadlines to meet, to be able to educate the public and also make sure we can enforce them effectively in a rapid fashion.
And I would just like to conclude by saying that we've heard folks suggest that certain local officials are in favor of more stringent national ambient air quality standards for ozone. Certain local officials are opposed to it. I can tell you from my state of Oklahoma, local officials are very opposed to it. I hope everybody understands that if the state of Oregon or the state of California, if other states want to have more stringent plans, that's not going to bother my constituents in the state of Oklahoma. They can go ahead and do those things without having to do it in Oklahoma. And so I just want everybody to understand, when states become implementers of federal policy, and then they end up getting bullied by the federal government. If you do this, then X, Y, or Z will happen. That's not the role of the federal government, to say that we're going to cut off your highway transportation funding if you don't comply with this new standard. This is federal bullying, and it needs to stop. And if Oregon or another state wants to implement more stringent standards, I'm okay with that. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.